Tell me The words of Nebuchadnezzar is recorded in the scripture. The words of Pharaoh scripture, or else we can start some things that we won't be able to control, which is called occults. I have found that there are some churches who started out on the right road have become a controlling church, and they became occults. I've seen it with my very own eyes, and I've heard testimony of people who have gotten away or escaped from the occult because of what was happening. They have been indoctrinated with false lies. So that's important. What does this say? Not the part in black, but the part in blue and red. What does somebody want to read it? Hold on. Somebody say something. Elder, what you said? God is nowhere. What did you say? God is nowhere. What did you say? What did you say? God is not here. God is nowhere. You see what I'm saying? People will take the scripture, and it depends upon where they are, they can use it to influence you. This is why it's important to understand the character of the writer or the character of the one speaking. Right. Now, when you think of my character and who I am and what I have done and my labor among you, now how do you read that? God is now here. Because you know who I am. And you know, I wouldn't say that God is nowhere, because I know that God is omnipresent. He is everywhere at the same time, and even at different times, right? So you understand my character, you understand what I believe, and now you can say, God is now here. This is how people manipulate the scripture. And so, what are we saying? Christ says this to Nicodemus. We understand that Christ knew all things. The only thing Christ did not know is the things that God had not revealed to him. And he goes on to testify about that even in the book of Acts. He tells Peter that some things that God just didn't reveal it. All right. So, but we know Christ had God dwelling on the inside of him. And so when he meet with Nicodemus, who was a ruler of the Jews. I told y'all this would be more Bible study than anything. All right. Nicodemus, let's look at character of both of these parties, because they were the only two in this conversation. They were the only two dialoguing at that particular time. Nicodemus, being a ruler of the Jews, understood Jewish dogma. He understood the law, the Pentateuch. He understood. He had all the books. He was a Pharisee. He was on the Sanhedrin court. This man understood law. When they talk about when his disciples did not wash their hands, the letter of the law said they had to wash their hands. The spirit of the law meant their heart was to be right. Y'all understand? Amen. So he understood the spirit of the law. And so Christ, who is the spirit of the law, and Nicodemus, who understood the letter of the law to the T, even Paul says that. Paul said when it came to the law, I was blameless. And he wasn't even on the Sanhedrin court yet. You understand? And so here we go. We got Nicodemus coming to Christ, talking to Christ in a quiet segment, in a secluded segment. And he's talking to Christ saying, for we know that thou art a preacher from God. He said, no man can do these miracles that thou doest except he come from God. What he's saying is that we have studied you, we have observed you, we have seen the things that you've done, and we separate you from so many people who had come. But here we are, we as Pharisees on this Sanhedrin court, we clearly know that you came from God. All right. Now we will not say you are the Messiah, but we know that you came from God. Because no one can do the miracles that you are doing except it come from God. That's right. Go with me. So here he is. So Christ, who is the law in spirit, Christ says, verily, verily, I say unto you, you must be born again. Yes. Told y'all I'm going back to the basics. Amen. He said you must be born again. It depends on how you read it. Yeah. Depends on where you are. Depends on the character of the person who wrote it. Nicodemus already have that respect for Christ as being a man of God. Nicodemus already have the knowledge that Christ came from God. Amen. So when Christ tells him you must be born again, Nicodemus do not challenge him, but Nicodemus not used to that stuff. All right. So he asks him, not in a challenging way, he asks him in an inquiry. I want to know. And so Christ says this. And listen, y'all, I'm still talking about once appointed time. See, because everyone who was not born again or who is not born again is not born again will be judged at the white throne judgment. And I don't want to be at that judgment, Deacon Ellery. Okay. We getting there. So here it is. Nicodemus said, how can a man be born? You see, Christ just twisted his head and messed up his mind because they are not accustomed to that. How can a man be born when he is old? Can he enter the second time into his mother's womb and be born? This tells us, just from his question, this tells us that Nicodemus understood only the letter of the law or the carnal part of the law. Because his question is carnal. His question is about his fleshly birth. His question is about his first birth. Christ said born again. Nicodemus had no problem when it said born again, knowing that it meant to be born a second time. He just didn't know how it was supposed to happen. Is it supposed to happen the same way we were born the first time? So Christ goes on to explain that to him, knowing his ignorance. Christ says this, verily, verily, or surely, surely, I say unto you, you must be born of water and of the Spirit. Now, Christ is talking about a second birth. So, in order to have a second birth, he is not inclined to make people believe are to speak of the first birth. Nicodemus already knew there was a first birth. So he's talking about the second birth. He speaks of water as baptism. Everyone, all theologians, not all theologians, I have to take that back. But most theologians believe that when he speaks of water, being born of water, it is baptism. Some say it's the water from the mother's womb. That is not right. I got to be real. He's talking about baptism. I told y'all the character of a person. The character of Nicodemus understood according to law that a washing, a spiritual ablution, which was a baptism, was necessary for regeneration prior to the law. So when Christ speaks of water, Christ is actually talking about baptism, something that Nicodemus understood because he was on the Sanhedrin court. He was a Pharisee. Pharisees had been baptized folks over and over and over. Every time they sinned, they were getting baptized. Every time they messed up, every time they were contaminated, they were getting baptized to regenerate themselves. You understand? So Christ brought back. But then Christ really shocked his mind when Christ said, and of the Spirit. And that's where Nicodemus didn't catch on. And Christ had to explain that to him. He said, that which is born of flesh, Nicodemus, from the mother's womb, that which is born of flesh is flesh. But that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. He said, don't you be surprised, Nicodemus. You must be born again. You must be born a second time. You must be born of the Spirit. Got to understand who's writing and who they're writing to. And that's how many times we get confused. We get confused. Same Bible, same words, two different opinions. So we got to start reading this stuff and getting an understanding of it. Because once appointed, it is appointed for man to die. Once. After this, you have absolutely no control of the after this. You have control now. You take charge of your life now, knowing that you have an appointment. I find it so unusual that people brush their teeth more often when they know they got a dental appointment coming. Right. We don't want the dentist to judge our mouth. Right. But we don't care if Christ judge our soul. Come on. Talk about it. Come on, y'all. So we clean that mouth. We use, what was that? Arm & Hammer baking soda. And we use that. We use peroxide. And we clean that mouth real good. What you doing? I got a dental appointment. See, y'all understand? Now it's time for you to say, I have an appointment with Christ. And for the saints, we have an appointment. For the sinners, they have an appointment. Let's get ourselves, judge ourselves. We judge our mouth, don't we? When you have a good hot date. I ain't talking about no dates. Ain't nobody dating in this place. We all married, right? What you do? You put the what? Sucrose? The Mentos? Come on, y'all. Peppermint wine. You judging yourselves. Right. Your girl ain't worried about your stink breath. She know you got abs and you got guns and she know you got money. She can, don't worry about that stink breath. I got me a man. We judge ourselves. And men ain't worried about your breath. going to be a judgment. Somebody going to judge you. It's going to be Christ at the judgment seat of Christ for the saints, or Christ at the white throne judgment for the sinners. Either way it goes, you're going to be judged. Once appointed time. Once. It is appointed once. It is appointed once. There's no second. There is a second life, but that second life is dependent. It is highly dependent. It is solely dependent, actually, on the life that you live now. Don't say my second life I'm going to do. No. Your second life could be from a judgment of condemnation, and you could be in the lake of fire. Right. I know, well, you probably haven't heard that from a church in a long time. There is a hell. There is a heaven. This is set up for after we leave earth. So come on. You remember I preached the topic, it's all about me. Listen, don't worry. Listen, Brother Joe, don't you worry about Sister Rosella. You better get yourself. Because it's all about you. Sister Rosella, don't you worry about Brother Joe. Brother Joe going to have to get his own. You better get yourself. Y'all understand? I'm crazy about my lump of sugar. See out there back there somewhere. I'm crazy about my wife. But hey, I know that I got an appointment, and my wife will not be able to hold my hand at this appointment. My last name starts with an A. Her last name, her maiden name starts with an S. So she may be a long time after I'm judged if you go in alphabetical order. So she may see me way ahead, and she may hear him say, she will hear him say, well done, thou good and faithful servant. And she can rejoice in line knowing that she followed what I did. But if there's any rebellion in her, that rascal, she could be judged for that. I'm not saying condemned for it, but I'm saying judged for it.
You are Alpha and Omega. You are Alpha and Omega. You're the beginning and the end. You're the beginning and the end. You're the same yesterday, today, and forever. I pray your name. I pray your name. You are Alpha and Omega. You're the beginning and the end. You're the beginning and the end. You're the same yesterday, today, and forever. I pray your name. I pray your name. Hallelujah. Holy, holy. You worthy of my praise. Hallelujah. Holy, holy. Yes, you are worthy. You worthy of my praise. Somebody lift your voice in here. He's worthy of praise. Yeah, Lord. Shout hallelujah. Yeah. Oh. Come on, stay with us. Y'all ready? You are Alpha and Omega. You're the beginning and the end. You're the beginning and the end. You're the same yesterday, today, and forever. I pray your name. I pray your name. Alpha and Omega. You are Alpha and Omega. You're the beginning and the end. You're the beginning and the end. You're the same as the day, the day you born. You're the same as the day, the day you born.